All right, we will begin. Welcome everybody to the live streamed webinar, um, Supercharge Your Bottom Line Through Disability Inclusion. This is Dr. Kirk Adams speaking to you from my home office in Seattle, Washington. I host one of these live streamed educational events every month, and I always have an esteemed guest. Today, my guest is Evan Amundson. You'll hear from him later, but let's hear your voice, Evan. Say hello and give a brief introduction, please.
Hey everyone, my name is Evan Amundson. Thank you, Kirk, for having me. I've been in the industry of supporting small businesses with payroll and HR software and been doing this for about 3 years. And what brings me here today is specifically to introduce a tax credit that's available through the payroll process that incentivizes businesses to hire or consider hiring somebody with a documented disability.
Fabulous. And I'll say your name correctly from now on.
Oh,
Evan,
no worries.
Evan
I've heard it
Amundson.
a million different ways, and they're
Okay.
all right. So
So again, this is Dr. Kirk Adams, and today we are really going to talk about what our taxpayer dollars can do for those of us who want to hire more people with disabilities. Little background on me for those in the live audience and those watching this archived recording. I am the immediate past president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind, which is our country's most historic and iconic organization serving people who are blind. It was Helen Keller's organization where she served as global brand ambassador for 44 years. And when I first moved from Seattle to New York City and went to work at the American Foundation for the Blind, I could walk down the hall and sit at her desk and play with her typewriter and read her Bible. And it was a very inspirational setting for the work of accelerating inclusion of people with disabilities in society and to try to build upon the great work that Ms. Keller did. Prior to that, I had the same role, president and CEO at the Lighthouse for the Blind, Inc., based here in Seattle, which is a social enterprise employing hundreds of blind and deafblind people. People are blind, deafblind with other disabilities, and a variety of businesses, some of them very unique, aerospace manufacturing being a particular note, making parts for all the Boeing aircraft, making issue items for the U.S. Army like the on-the-move hydration and the entrenchment tool, managing contracts for the Navy and the Defense Contract Management Agency, operating base supply centers on military bases up and down the West Coast. So I've had firsthand experience on the great contributions people with disabilities can make to the bottom line of a business. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Only 35% of us with significant disabilities are in the workforce, and there are many, many thousands of people with disabilities who are eager to work, highly motivated to work, have training, education, and have not been able to find the opportunity to put their foot on the career ladder. And as I talk to employers, they are talking about the fact that they cannot find enough qualified, motivated employees to hire and retain. So they have issues around attracting and retaining talent. Meanwhile, there is a pool of qualified, motivated, talented people who are seeking opportunities. So what I get to do in my consulting practice, which is Innovative Impact LLC, is to connect those dots, to connect the employers who oftentimes, even if they have made a commitment to hire disabilities, say they don't know how to begin, they cannot find qualified applicants with disabilities, they don't know how to proceed. And then if you talk to blind other people with other disabilities themselves and or their professional vocational rehabilitation counselors, they will say they cannot find enough employers willing to make employment opportunities available to people with disabilities. So there's a disconnect somewhere. And what I have the pleasure of doing is eliminating that disconnect and aligning employers with the resources that exist, the government resources, the other companies, the nonprofits, and the community. So in particular today, I want to talk about the government sector. We know from a book like Forces for Good that in order to accomplish anything really transformational, we need to align government, corporate, nonprofit, and community. In that book, where they look at 12 truly transformational social movements, Habitat for Humanity is their first case study, which started out as a couple people building a couple houses for a couple people, is now a global force for housing equity. And they did that by aligning government, corporate, nonprofit, and community. So in our case, as we look at the need to accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce, to the benefit of those individuals with disabilities, to the benefit of the companies that hire them, we want to look at the business case for businesses to hire people such as myself with a significant disability. And we talk about that from a strengths-based lens. So I'm a researcher. I like to read about things. So there's a book called The Talent Code that I reference often that talks about how people build strengths, and people build strength by taking on increasingly difficult challenges and overcoming them. So if a person is going to become a world-class soccer player, they are in some sort of system structure where they have a guide, a mentor, a coach that sets them increasingly more difficult challenges. If you're going to become a world-class musician, you're starting with the basics, learning the scales. You're learning increasingly more difficult and challenging pieces of music. In life, as a person with a disability, the lived experience of living day to day and moving through the world that is not constructed for our ideal access, we meet and overcome challenges constantly. And that helps us develop really unique sets of characteristics around resilience and perseverance and creative problem solving, how to analyze and manage risk, how to work in ever-evolving diverse teams, and communication skills. And those are the characteristics the employers I talk to say they are seeking as they build their workforce in order to compete and win in the marketplace. So given that, I want to talk about some practical resources that employers can access in order to move toward strengthening their bottom line through disability inclusion. And first and foremost, I want to talk about the vocational rehabilitation system. It is funded by the Department of Education, a division called the Rehabilitation Services Administration. And these are federal dollars paid for by us, the taxpayer, that then flow down to each state and territory to fund vocational rehabilitation agencies, which I'll refer to shorthand as VR. Not virtual reality in this case, but vocational rehabilitation. And these federal dollars are operating at a state and local level through a number of vocational rehabilitation agencies. So there are about 80 of these agencies. Originally, our good friend Helen Keller in the 1930s and 1940s worked with individual state legislatures and lobbied them and convinced them to start commissions for the blind, which would support blind people in achieving employment. And let's just say there were 48 of those when we had 48 states, and then 50. And then in the 1970s, other disability groups became more organized and lobbied for equivalent services to be available to people with disabilities other than blindness. So most states created a second agency to support people with disabilities other than blindness. So there were roughly 100 of these vocational rehabilitation agencies, again, funded by the Department of Education federally. Then in the 1990s, there was a movement to streamline government, consolidate, eliminate waste. So there was a movement to consolidate these agencies to create a single agency in each state to serve everybody with disabilities. And we in the blindness community fought that as hard as we could because we know blindness is a low incidence disability, and that if we get thrown in the mix with other more common disabilities, our issues often get pushed to the back burner. So we successfully fought it in 30 states. 20 states did combine their agencies and have a single agency. 30 states have two. So we have about 80 of these rehabilitation agencies now. In our state, Washington State, there's the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation that serves people with disabilities other than blindness, and then Department of Services for the Blind, providing vocational rehabilitation services for blind people. So wherever you are, if you're in the United States, there's a vocational rehabilitation agency to serve you as an employer. The overall budget for vocational rehabilitation annually is $4 billion. They have thousands of staff. They have billions of dollars. They have many resources dedicated to facilitating employment of people with disabilities. And they are egregiously underused by employers. Research we gathered at the American Foundation for the Blind showed us that of those companies that had formally stated that they had a commitment to employing people with disabilities, less than 10%, 9.2%, were connected with their state vocational rehabilitation agency. And just let me tell you what vocational rehabilitation agency can do for you. Each of these agencies has a function, which is an employer liaison function. They have staff whose job it is to work with you as an employer to understand your business needs, to communicate those needs to the vocation rehabilitation counselors, who each have a caseload of clients with disabilities seeking employment. Each of those clients has an individual plan for employment with objectives, training plans, skill development plans, and the vocational rehabilitation counselor can match their clients' knowledge, skills, and abilities and career goals with an employer's needs. What jobs do you need to fill? They will be so happy to hear from you when you call your state vocational rehabilitation agency and say, I am an employer. I'd really like to talk to whoever's in charge of employer relations. And that will start the process. So what they can do, among many other things, I mentioned they can vet, pre-screen qualified applicants for your open jobs. They can come to your place of business, whether it be physical or virtual. They can assess the workplace and the job that you are seeking to fill. They can understand what types of modifications or accommodations, if any, are needed to make a good fit between the person with the disability and the job. And then they can pay for those accommodations. They can buy hardware and software. They can provide additional training if a person needs particular skills that they don't yet have in order to meet your qualifications. They can provide a job coach if the person needs one-on-one individual support in their job. They can pay salary during an on-the-job training period or an internship. So the vocational rehabilitation system is there for us. We are paying for it. It's available. It's underused. If anyone would like to talk with me directly about how best to connect with vocational rehabilitation, you can find me on LinkedIn, Kirk Adams, PhD, or my website is innovativeimpact.consulting. So as our government looked at the set of social problems before us, one of which being the fact that only 35% of significantly disabled people are in the workforce. The remainder are primarily collecting a very modest Social Security disability insurance SSDI check. Many are living in poverty, and how to flip that script, how to move people from receiving transfer payments from taxpayers in order to survive to people becoming taxpayers, to people becoming gainfully employed. And Congress has done a number of things in various statutes to encourage and support and incentivize and financially remunerate employers who take steps to include people with disabilities in their workforce. We're going to talk about some of these, but the primary one I've asked Evan to focus on today is the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And as I told Evan earlier today on the phone, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I have rarely encountered an individual who has so much enthusiasm and excitement about the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Evan. If you could tell us a little bit about what led you to the point where you are an expert on the WOTC, and then ask you to enlighten our live audience and our viewers of the recorded archives about what the Work Opportunity Tax Credit can do for them.
Sure. Thanks again, Kirk. Give me just a moment to share my screen here.
Sure. Jaws says,
Hopefully.
Evan Amundson has started screen share.
We go into presentation mode. You can see how good I am with computers. Okay, hopefully you can see the right screen here. Again, my name is Evan Amundson. I have been with Heartland for 3 years. Kirk, you had asked kind of what led me down this path of getting to know WOTC so well. A big part of what we do at Heartland is to help small to mid-sized businesses recover this tax credit.
Oh, I didn't know that. So the acronym, everything has an acronym. So the WOTC, Work Opportunity Tax Credit, you call it WOTC?
Yeah, I should have started there. Sorry. So,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So thank you.
Kirk, I got a slide deck going. I'll just read off the agenda real quick. I'm going to give everyone a quick introduction to WOTC. What is it? The benefits of WOTC for employers, eligible target groups, steps to apply, and maximizing WOTC benefits. And yes, WOTC is much shorter than saying work opportunity tax credits 40 times in this presentation. So I am going to shorten that out for you guys. A little bit about me, born and raised in the Seattle area. I got to become a dad last November. There's a picture of myself and my wife and our little girl. I love to help people, and I became passionate about this particular tax credit because I talk about it so much in our business. It's a huge value add to the businesses that I'm chatting with, and so few of them take advantage of it, and even less know about it. So it's my goal, along with Kirk's, to just educate people on some of the programs that are out there for businesses and to support hiring a diverse group of employees. So a quick blurb about Heartland. We do a full service payroll and HR, and WOTC, the end-to-end process is built in for that. So it's a pretty white glove WOTC service for our customers. Okay, so starting with the history of WOTC, what is it? This was a program created by the Small Business Job Protection Act of 1996. The goal of this program, it was designed to encourage employers with a tax incentive to increase hiring of members of certain disadvantaged groups who face a barrier to employment. And it also aims to reduce the unemployment rate among these target groups. So it helps the employers and the employees. It's a win-win, and it's a great program. Since its inception, the WOTC program has been extended several times, most recently through the end of next year, with legislation on the table to make it permanent. Several of the targeted groups have been added with criteria expanded for eligibility. So it started with just one or two targeted groups, and it's been expanded several times due to the success of the program. How does the work opportunity tax credit work? In a nutshell, participation in the WOTC program allows tax-paying businesses to lower their income tax liability from $1,200 up to $9,600 per eligible new hire, as long as the employee is in their first year of employment, is certified as being a member of a target group, and we will cover those, and performs 400 hours of services for that employer. So this program is designed for long-term employment of individuals. Anyone that works fewer than 400 hours, but at least 120 can qualify for partial credit. And something to keep in mind for new businesses that are just opening up, if they're new, all of their employees count as new hires, so they could potentially be eligible. And just a quick success story on that. I worked with a new business to start them on payroll recently. This was a restaurant here in Puget Sound. 5 of their 11 employees qualified for the work opportunity tax credit, netting the business at least $12,000 in lowered tax liabilities for their first year. And the business owners didn't even know about this before connecting with me for payroll services. So it was a huge win for them to recover so much. Some of the non-monetary benefits of WOTC: maximizing DEI efforts. So this creates a more equitable and representative workplace that reflects a diverse global market. It provides higher retention rates, reducing turnover and fostering continuity, maximizing organizational stability and success, lower absenteeism, fostering a healthy work environment, enhancing productivity and minimizing disruptions to workflow, higher productivity, translating into increased operational success and competitiveness in the market, boosted workplace morale. There's an appeal to investors, attracting investors and customers alike that are more committed than ever to putting their money toward positive social impact, and increased profits, of course, resulting from improved employee performance, reduced turnover cost, and heightened customer satisfaction. And of course, the monetary incentive for WOTC, again, this is tax savings. So employers reduce their federal income tax. I mentioned the varied credit amounts from $1,200 to $9,600 per eligible employee. This is an uncapped program, so business owners are not limited to how many WOTC eligible candidates that they can hire. It can be literally every candidate on their staff. And this tax credit is able to be pushed forward up to 20 years and used retroactively back a year. So it's pretty versatile. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the targeted groups, but first I pull a graphic of the targeted groups I'm about to go over. How many WOTCs were successful submissions? In total, there were close to 2 million eligible new hires that participating businesses benefited from last year, with SNAP recipients accounting for 2/3 of all submissions. And I will start with that targeted group, SNAP, better known as food stamps. So what this is, somebody that's eligible as a SNAP recipient, they're using food stamps in the previous 6 months, or at least 3 of the previous 5 months when they apply and get approved to start work. A quick stat about SNAP: 12% of Americans, or 1 out of 8 of us, are on food stamps. They tend to be work in high turnover, low wage industries. A new hire could be eligible for this tax credit simply by having a family member on food stamps, so more people would qualify than you think. Supplemental security income recipients. Kirk touched on this a little bit. SSI is a federal assistance program administered by the Social Security Administration that provides financial support to individuals who are disabled, blind, or elderly and have limited income and resources. Unlike Social Security benefits, SSI is a need-based benefit and does not require work history. Members of this WOTC target group include individuals who have received supplemental Social Security under Title IX of the Social Security Act for any month ending within the 60-day period of the hire. I've included a chart of SSI federal payments from 2021. This is the stats I could find. That year, SSI was a $55 billion industry, with 90% of those funds allocated to individuals with a disability and the remaining 10% going toward elderly recipients. Kirk also talked about vocational rehab. Rehabilitation referral is an individual who has a mental or physical disability and has been referred to the employer while receiving or upon completion of rehabilitative services pursuant to a state plan approved under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, an employment network plan under the Ticket to Work program, which I'll talk more about, and also a program carried out under the Department of Veteran Affairs. Ticket to Work participants, a ticket holder is an individual with a disability who is participating in the Ticket to Work program and seeking employment. This program encourages people receiving Social Security disability insurance or supplemental security income to work and become financially independent. Ticket to Work holders are similar to the previous two target groups. In this instance, eligible employees are participants of this program. So they're all got some overlap, but they're each individual categories. Long-term unemployment, that's anybody who's unemployed for half a year or more. They're going to qualify a business for a tax credit if they re-enter the workforce. So this could even be a mother that is out on maternity leave watching her child. For the graphic on the screen, as of June, the national unemployment rate was 4.1%, coming down from above 6% at the start of 2021 when the economy was a little shakier. There's also designated community residents. So these regions refer to federal programs established in the U.S. to encourage economic development in distressed areas by offering incentives such as tax credits and grants to businesses. This decreases high poverty rates and lowers unemployment levels. A designated community resident is an individual between the ages of 18 and 39 and resides within one of the following: an empowerment zone, an enterprise community, and a renewal community. Also, a designated community resident must continue to reside at those locations at all times. There's a graphic on the screen showing the entire United States and where some of these communities are, so you get a sense of kind of a higher poverty areas. Some of the incentives for businesses that hire.
Evan, could you just give a couple examples for those of us who can't see the map?
Sure. We see a lot in Midwest major cities. Not so much here in Puget Sound, so I can't cite local examples. But it's heavily condensed, kind of straight down the map, Kirk. Again, it's just all over the United States and areas, but looks like Minnesota North has the most condensed areas.
Okay, thank you.
That cover it. Sorry, it's a little. I can send a list of these areas.
I was just curious.
After the meeting.
No, so I take it kind of the from Canadian border to Mexico down the middle of the country is what I'm imagining.
That's definitely where it's
okay.
The heaviest condensed. There are resources within every state to find empowerment zones, enterprise communities, renewal communities. You can look this up by zip code. There's a lot of resources for that, which I can provide if it helps at all.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Some of the incentive for businesses located in these communities: wage credits for employers hiring local residents, increased expensing deductions for certain capital investments, inclusion from income for gains on certain small business stock, or access to grants and funding for specific projects. There is a summer youth program for young adults that live in these areas. Those areas that I mentioned in the last slide. So those would be anyone age 16 or 17 who has a principal place of abode within an empowerment zone, enterprise community, or renewal community and is employed between May 1st and September 15th. And qualified veteran. This is the most in my WOTC because veterans net the highest WOTC can qualify with a combination of being a veteran and on food stamps or SNAP, disabled, unemployed. So there's a lot of different combinations that might qualify a veteran for a WOTC tax credit. Qualified ex-felons as well are individuals who were convicted of a felony.
Evan, this is Kirk. You're breaking up a little bit for me from time to time. I don't know if there's anything to do about that, but I just wanted to let you know.
I appreciate it. I'm not sure if there's anything I can do, but if it gets really bad, I can jump on my phone and keep
Okay, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Just occasional. Thanks.
Okay. Any felon who is convicted of a felony and hired within a year after their date of conviction, work release, or release from jail or prison. Around 8% of people in the US are convicted felons. Around 2 million felons are released from prison every year, and approximately 19 million are currently not incarcerated. Just to give you an idea of how many might qualify. And almost to the end of the targeted groups, TANF. So that is TANF recipient is an individual who is a member of a family receiving assistance under state plan approved under Part A of Title IX of the Social Security Act. The assistance must be received for any 9-month period during the 18-month period ending on a hiring date. And there's also a category for long-term TANF recipients as well. The caseload as of last September for TANF recipients, a total of 1 million families composed of 2.8 million recipients. So I mentioned there's different tax credit values for these specific targeted groups. Kirk, there is a graphic on the screen showing some of the different WOTC amounts you can get for hiring veterans. I'll kind of walk everyone through it. Veterans range from $2,400 to $9,600. TANF recipients from $2,400 to $9,000. Remaining target groups range from $750 to $2,400. Tax exempt organizations, such as nonprofits, may only recover WOTC through hiring qualified veterans. For those organizations, this credit is claimed not against the income tax, but against payroll tax liability, specifically the Social Security tax the business owes. And then there are some ineligible people that would not be qualifying for WOTC even if they were part of a targeted group. So that's an employer, relatives and dependents, majority and former. So I'm going to give you just a quick overview of the WOTC as tax credit. This needs to happen within the first 28 days of a new hire. So it's a pretty quick turnaround with how fast a business has to take action. They would need to fill out this form 8850, which determines eligibility of the WOTC credit and turn that into the appropriate agency. From there, local agency, by the way, so it's run by each state. From there, the business needs to determine whether or not the agency determines whether or not that new hire is potentially eligible. And they let the business know with certification. And that new hire needs to work 120 hours and 884. So you can see already that this is kind of a pain in the butt for business owners to go through all this, whether or not they have time or the experience to fill out all this paperwork. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about resources for businesses to capture WOTC without having to do this themselves. They can perform that process in-house, filling out that form, getting it turned into the appropriate agency, and then submitting it on their taxes at the end of the year. They can work with a payroll company like Heartland, a PEO, or an HRIS. PEO stands for Professional Employee Organization, and HRIS is Human Resource Information System. And these are services that handle some combination of payroll, retirement, and benefits. How they will often charge to recover WOTC is through a percentage of the recovered amount or a flat fee. And then some resources from the employee's side that might highlight them as a good candidate for WOTC eligibility. They can partner with state-sponsored workforce agencies, connect with headhunters, find vocational agencies that specialize in DEI hires, or research employers that accommodate DEI hires, as an example, that use assisted onboarding, screen readers, etc. This is a graphic of the yearly total amount of WOTC submissions dating back to 2014. So 2014 total WOTC submissions all the way up to 2023. We don't see much of a trend or steady increase with submissions hovering, excuse me. We don't see much of a trend, and submissions hover around 2 million submissions or so most years. But I've also included another graphic that covers the same stretch of time with WOTC submissions broken down by target group. And the positive take from this chart is that we see SSI recipients and ticket holders growing percent. Kids Work, our program supporting those with documented disabilities. So SSI grew from 14,000 successful submissions in 2014 all the way up to 62,000 in 2023. And the Ticket to Work program has grown from 870 in 2014 to over 4,000 in 2023. A couple more facts and figures. About 20 to 25% of Americans are going to qualify for at least one target group for this tax credit. It's a huge number, 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. It's not unusual for a business to find somebody that's eligible. For the Department of Labor, there were close to 2 million WOTCs issued in the United States. Using the average tax credit value of $2,400, we can conservatively estimate the program to net U.S. businesses $4.7 billion. The impact of removing the barriers that might be in front of disabled people finding employment. If disabled workers experience the same employment rate as those without a disability, nearly 14 million more disabled people would have been employed in 2021, according to the Center for American Progress. Heartland delivered 970 WOTC tax packages for our clients in 2023, valued at $3.2 million. I uncovered 2 more tax credits while I was doing this research that I just wanted to quickly share. So there is the Disabled Access Tax Credit available to businesses. Small businesses with either $1 million or less in revenue or 30 or few full-time employees may take a tax credit of up to $5,000 annually for the cost of providing reasonable accommodations such as sign language interpreters, readers, materials in alternative formats such as Braille or large print, the purchase of adaptive equipment, the modification of existing equipment, or the removal of architectural barriers. And one more tax credit program, architectural barrier removal tax deduction, is an annual deduction of up to $15,000, and it's available to businesses of any size for the cost of removing barriers for people with disabilities, including the following: providing access to parking spaces, ramps, and curb cuts, providing wheelchair accessible telephones, water fountains, and restrooms, making walkways at least 48 inches wide, and making entrances accessible. Excuse me. So in conclusion, employers who make the effort to utilize the talents of disadvantaged groups will be rewarded with a healthier team, increased profits, and happier employees. Successful businesses can enrich the communities around them. So that's all I have for you. Information, it's on that LinkedIn calendar invite as well. I really appreciate you, Kirk, letting me come on. And
you think that's all you have for us, but there's more, because I need to ask you a couple things.
Any questions?
Yeah. So Evan, by the way, is our new favorite name in this household because our grandson, Evan, is 2.5. He's the most amazing child ever, of course. Um, so one thing that I just flagged is the WOTC, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit eligibility, that a person, if an employer hires someone who's referred to them by the vocational rehabilitation system, that person is automatically qualified for the employer to apply for that tax credit because they are a client of the vocational rehabilitation system and they had to meet eligibility requirements for those services. So that's really cool. I had talked a lot at the beginning of this webinar about how important it is that employers who want to hire people with disabilities access the resources available through the vocational rehabilitation VR system. And now you can add that cherry on top that you go through that process, you can get a tax credit. So Evan, really, I asked you what kind of motivates you, energizes you around WOTC, and you said you really like to help people. But again, I'm gonna again. I'm gonna ask that question again. Really, in your business, you're with a company that provides payroll services, which everybody who has a business needs to meet payroll. I'm sure you provide a set of valuable services, and I've encountered a number of payroll companies in my day. But again, I've never really met anyone who's as focused on making their clients educated and aware of and helping facilitate use of these tax credits to employ marginalized populations. So is there something in your family history, your background, encounters you've had along the pathway that have brought you to this place?
Um, a couple of things. I don't know. Everyone in my family is hard of hearing, so our Thanksgiving dinners are just loud, very loud. I'm sure the martinis don't help.
Yeah.
But since working here at Heartland, I've met a lot of folks like yourself who have either been in recruiting or in some vocational program that I don't know, it's not just about payroll services for business. It's about how you're going to affect the community, how we can reduce the unemployment rate for people with documented disabilities. I've heard some incredible stories about whether somebody is blind or autistic, or they have some, limitation of what, or perceived limitation of what they can do, and how businesses are just thriving by figuring out, just finding the right fit for them. So kind of taking that ball and running with it, and getting other businesses to realize that there are things that anybody can do exceptionally well, and that it's just a matter of finding out what that is and providing the right resources and the right work environment for them to be, and like you said, bring that quality of life.
Yeah. So talk to us about the restaurant example. I noted you said the nine employees, five of whom were people who were eligible for the work opportunity tax credit for the employer. So just mechanically, how does that work? What did you do to discover that? What kind of process do you use, and kind of mechanically, what do you put in place so that that restaurant owner can receive the tax credits that they're entitled to?
Sure. And I saw that Jeremy might have had a question. So if you still do, Jeremy, we will jump to that in just a moment. So with that restaurant, that opportunity was referred by a CPA of a new business that just needed to set up payroll service from the get-go. Since that is a new business, all of their employees are considered new hired. And as part of the new hire onboarding process with Heartland, um, part of that onboarding process is that each of the new hires fills out a questionnaire, which is that form essentially 8850, to determine if they're potentially part of a targeted group. So before their first day of work, we get them ready for payroll, of course, but we've also established if they're potentially eligible for WOTC. Then we track the payroll hours through our system, of course. And then on the back end, this is just an automated process where we go and submit all that information to the state of Washington. And once we get approval and get that certified, then Heartland produces a tax package for our customers to hand to their CPA, back to their CPA at the end of the year. So it can be that simple when you're working not just with our company, but with any agency that is adept at recovering these tax credits. It's very hands off for the business. It's just a simple process that you can put in place to add to your new hire process for your employees, and then working with a partnering company to do the rest, all the paperwork and stuff that's kind of a little more difficult. So it was
And
a
you said
huge surprise.
Heartland's done this for 970 employers, 970 clients
Last year, yeah.
last year. That's fabulous. So I had a couple more things to touch on, but you say Jeremy raised his hand. Jeremy, have you a question?
I
Yeah,
thought I saw a hand up.
just a quick clarification, Kirk. I promise I won't take more than 10 seconds. You had talked about the having a case open. I'm going to use like Virginia BVI, right? So being a blind person, having a case open with an agency to find employment. Where I'm getting or asking for the clarification, you said they have to be referred to the employer by the agency. Is it that they have to be referred, or they just have to have an open case?
That I am a little unsure of, but we can definitely find out. I know this stuff on a high level, but getting into the weeds on each of the eligibility requirements would
Let's
take
find
a
that.
bit more research.
Yeah, my intuition says it's if you have an open case, because you would have gone through an eligibility verification process, but we'll find that out for sure.
If we could clarify that, that'd be
Yeah.
amazing, Kirk. Thank you.
Yeah, I also, and thanks, Evan, for talking about the other tax credits, the disabled access credit that can provide a $5,000 tax credit if a company buys assistive technology or equipment, and then the barrier removal tax deduction if people need to modify buildings. I wanted to say that a lot of states have tax incentives based on the federal, both on the work opportunity tax credit, there's a disabled access credit, and barrier removal. So there's a couple examples, and there's bunches of them. Delaware has a tax credit, 10% of gross wages if they hire a VR client. Jeremy, Iowa tax credit, 65% of wages paid for the first 12 months. Louisiana tax credit, 40% of wages for the first 4 months and 30% every month thereafter for up to 100 employees. New York has a 35% of the second year of wages. So many federal, state, and local governments have tried to put things in place to ameliorate this employment issue that we have. I wanted to touch on Social Security disability insurance. Evan mentioned it. So in the 1930s, as part of the New Deal, when the Social Security Administration was put in place, there was a benefit called a Social Security disability insurance check. And it was really for people who became disabled when they were working and could no longer work. And the assumption at that time was if you were disabled, you would not be able to work. And that is still really the way the law is written. So you can go through a process to document your disability, and it basically says you're not able to work, and you can receive a check from the government. There is an allowable earnings limit. You can earn up to a certain amount per month, about $1,700 if you're blind. If you make one more dollar than the limit, you lose your check. You can lose your Medicare, Medicaid. So there's a great disincentive for people to take the risk to move into employment. And I just want to acknowledge that. There are benefits counselors that can help a person to maximize the value of SSDI to them while they're pursuing work. There are trial periods available on which you can continue to receive the SSDI. support while you're moving into employment. There are expenses that you can count against your limit. If you're a guide dog user, you can count the expense of your care of your dog, feeding of your dog. If you use assistive technology, you can count the cost of your assistive technology against the limits. So I really, if people are viewing this and they are, or their family member is in such a situation where SSDI is proving to be a disincentive to pursue employment, I would really urge you to seek benefits counseling. The Social Security Administration provides that kind of counseling. They contract in every state with an ombudsman, and then your local nonprofit in your community that works with people with disabilities may have benefits counseling available. On Ticket to Work, that Evan touched on, it's a Social Security Administration effort, again, to move people off of receiving transfer payments, receiving government assistance, to becoming gainfully employed and becoming taxpayers. Well, that's a mechanical sounding thing. I always like to talk about the dignity of work and the self-identification, positive self-identification that comes with meaningful work. But the Ticket to Work, our research shows, is very underutilized by people who are blind in particular. It basically allows a person receiving Social Security disability benefits to have dollars to spend on supports to help them become employed, and they can, it's called assign their ticket, but they can choose who's going to help them. They can shop the marketplace and choose an agency that they think can best help them to become employed, and then they assign that ticket, and that's how the work is funded. So the term for those agencies is called an employment network. So if you are an employer and want to explore helping people move from the Social Security reliance into employment, you could put the term employment network and your location into a search engine and find the people in your community involved in Ticket to Work. And again, if you hire someone who has been part of the Ticket to Work program, that automatically allows you to apply for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. With that, Evan, let's have you tell people how they can get in touch with you. I'm guessing you would happily send your presentation if people asked you for it. So what's the best way for people to reach you?
Thanks, Kirk. Yeah, happy to share any WOTC resources I have, that entire deck from an informational perspective, if that helps anybody out. I can definitely pass it along. My name is Evan Amundson, Amundson. You can find me on LinkedIn. My information is in the deck as well. If there's anything I can do to help anybody listening, I will point them in the right direction or provide whatever I can. So that's the whole goal of this, is to bring some sort of value to those that are listening and seeing if we can accomplish something through this tax credit or through any resources in my network like Kirk.
Thanks, Evan. So again, I'm Dr. Kirk Adams, Managing Director of Innovative Impact LLC. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kirk Adams, PhD, or my website, innovativeimpact.consulting. My email address is kadams@innovativeimpact.consulting. And let's see if there are anyone who's joined us live today. Any additional questions? Hearing none, if you are viewing this as an archived recording, please feel free to reach out to Evan or I. We're all for one and one for all, accelerating inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce, helping businesses supercharge their bottom lines through disability inclusion, helping transform the lives of people with disabilities through meaningful employment. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.